Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi or cinema, whichever you prefer. Of course, your Archbishop of Banterbury, your Chancellor of Cheerfulness, and lest we forget, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right. Robert Meyer Burnett coming at you, Robcasting at you. You, members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community, the greatest community made up of imagination connoisseurs from across the 28 known galaxies. Today has been a very interesting day, ladies and gentlemen. We all know that currently, right now, James Gunn is presenting the entire cast of the Suicide Squad. They're playing a competition. It's very interesting who has been cast and what they're... Well, you know, I'm going to ruin a lot of things. I'm going to spoil a lot of DC Fandome things, but I won't spoil Suicide Squad because I only saw a bit of the panel. So I'll go back and watch it. They're going to repeat all this stuff every day. But I have to say, even though John Campy and I have been bitching and moaning and complaining, like, how can they do this? I think ultimately, from what I have watched all morning, the DC Fandome was a resounding success. I have to say, I've thoroughly enjoyed everything that I've seen. Of course, at first I was like, no, it's not live. I don't know about the fan, is it fan, is it enough? Where's the live interaction? That said, really liked everything they've done. I think it was a really cool event. Kudos to everybody. And I really like seeing everyone. And even if they had small panels, I think the information was presented in a great way. The Flash panel was short, but wildly entertaining. Great to see Ezra Miller dropping some knowledge. Also, really interesting to find out, as far as the Flash panel goes, that Bruce Wayne has made, apparently in Zack Snyder's version of Justice League, Bruce Wayne had also, or at some point was going to make Barry Allen's suit. Well, the new Flash suit in Flashpoint is made by Bruce Wayne. Now, as I said on the John Campea show yesterday, I said there was no way that Ben Affleck read the script for the first time last week and then signed up. And it's been confirmed. Humberto Gonzalez confirmed that no, Ben Affleck was consulting on the script for a while, and he had been approached to do this. And it was only last week, when the script, I'm sure, was done, that he signed off, or that's what they said. And that's, as I was saying on the John Campea show, nobody just gets ambushed by something and decides to do it a week and a half before it's announced. No, these things take months. They're carefully considered. All the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. I can tell you this, before we had William Shatner involved in Free Enterprise, we had written a script, and we put him in it. We didn't talk to him. It took a long time, months to even get him to and the lengths we went to have him even call us on the phone. It's a long process. So finding out that Bruce Wayne has made the new, I have to say that this Flash movie that has come and gone, it's been gone through how many different directors and how many different iterations. It's very clear to me that this movie is finally happening. And it looks pretty exciting. I'm very excited about it, and I don't think Bruce Wayne is going to be a 5-minute cameo. I think that Bruce Wayne and Barry Allen's relationship in the Flash movie is going to solidify the emotional core of the film. And their friendship, which I think is really... I love the idea that there's going to be a friendship between the two of them that is going to inform the rest of the film. And I think Ben Affleck will have maybe not a lot of screen time, but he's not going to be in it for only 5 minutes. It's not going to be some brief cameo. It'll definitely have some meat to it. I don't think he's going to be in a lot of the movie, but I do think, I stand by my idea that maybe he'd get 15 or 20 minutes of screen time. Certainly more than Beatrice Straight got in Network, and she got the Best Supporting Actress award at the Academy Awards for 1976. I think 76. Another thing that was really interesting, another panel that I really liked, was the panel that Walter Hamada and Jim Lee were on, the DC Multiverse panel, and Guggenheim, I think. And it was very interesting, for the very first time, seeing Walter Hamada directly address their, at least Warner Brothers' cinematic approach to, and knowing Jim Lee's overseeing this with Walter Hamada, I don't think I've ever been more excited about the upcoming slate of DC movies as I am now. Knowing that they're fully embracing something that DC was known for, their multiverse. Marvel has a multiverse too, but the DC multiverse was basically created in a Flash comic, in the Flash of Two Worlds. And they're really embracing that because that's what DC has that is unique to DC. And I think we're going to be, we're seeing more of those because finally, and what I've banged on a lot on this show, what I've talked about a lot, maybe I should switch my camera angle. Might be better. What I've talked a lot about on this show is the fact that what you need at the studio level or at the network level is, well, for a long time, most of the time, actually up until recently, we've never had executives or the people calling the shots that really understood what this material is from a holistic standpoint. Like, somebody can understand Batman, they can understand Superman, but to have someone like Walter Hamada, and it's very clear just listening to him speak, he understands all of this. And that's what DC is lacking, or it was lacking. It isn't lacking that anymore. And I think with the new regime there, since Kevin Tsujihara left, and the ouster of people like Jeff Johns knew as well, but Jeff Johns was from the comic book world. Making deals in Hollywood and producing movies is a different thing, even though, yes, I know, I understand he's now producing television and movies as well. But we needed somebody, I think, with a holistic approach and an overall sense of things. But I from what I got, at least from what I saw today, and Walter Hamada speaking, I'm very excited about the direction that the DC movies are going, which is terrific. And Suicide Squad looks to be hella fun. Wonder Woman 84. You know, I think the overarching storyline about wishes being fulfilled is going to be interesting, especially if everybody in the world suddenly gets granted their wishes for whatever reason. I just don't know if that's the direction I would have expected the movie to go in. I liked what I saw. I didn't love it. My jury is out on Wonder Woman 84. I really enjoyed the first Wonder Woman. There's a lot of great visuals. Excuse me. But I'll wait and see. I mean, to me, it looks interesting, but certainly nothing I've seen from Wonder Woman 84 has blown me away. That doesn't mean I'm not going to anticipate it. Really like Patty Jenkins. Really like Gal Gadot, Kristen Wiig. You know, it could be great. I'm not totally sold on it. Mostly because of what it seems to be about, and that's fine. You know, that's fine. But I am very excited about the direction that DC is going in. And I have to say, of all of the new movies, whether it's Black Adam, another Aquaman, Flashpoint is at the top of my list. As a DC comic fanboy I mean, if you ever to come into the Robservatory, I am surrounded by DC Absolute Editions and comics and figures and characters, and I love the DC universe. I love the Marvel universe too, but first and foremost, I was always a DC fan. I as I grew older, I grew into Marvel, but as a kid, my first comic book that I collected was Justice League. Which brings me to my next, obviously, yes, did I watch the trailer for Zack Snyder's Justice League that has not been shown yet, but it was leaked earlier? Yes, I did. Hence this. I took these images out of the trailer. Yes, that's Darkseid, and yes, that's the Justice League with Superman in the black suit. And I already had people bitching at me on Twitter. Oh, Rob, you know, you're ruining for all of us. Hey, man, who are you? If you're a big fan and you didn't watch the leaked trailer, shame on you. What kind of a fan are you? No, I'm just kidding. I really liked it. It was a version of Hallelujah. The song, I really enjoyed what we saw. Now, I mean, again, I'm always talking about authorship on this show, and what I mean by that is, does the author of a book, does the writer of a comic, whatever the creative entities are that are involved in whatever media we're talking about, but let's just say movies. The thing that I'm most interested in filmmaking is authorship. Martin Scorsese, Christopher Nolan, Francis Coppola, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Andy Muschietti. I mean, pick your director of choice. Patty Jenkins, Catherine Bigelow. You know, what I want as a astute viewer and somebody who's a fan of this material to be given a vision. Now, there are times when I might not have agreed with a filmmaker's vision, but I can at least respect the fact that they were allowed to realize their vision on screen. Now, one of the things about Zack Snyder, and I've said this before and I want to be very clear, James Gunn wrote Zack Snyder's remake of Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead, as everyone knows, if you look behind me, there's my Japanese chrome box set of the Argento cut and the can cut of Dawn of the Dead, which is coming out in just a little over a month. The ultimate version of Dawn of the Dead that's ever appeared in home video in any format. I was so adamantly opposed to them remaking Dawn of the Dead because, as if you've watched this show, a couple weeks ago I waxed rhapsodic about my love of Dawn of the Dead. But I was so against it. But, you know, I went with an open mind. And the first 10 minutes of the movie, the opening sequence, and even the credits, I was sold. I'm like, okay. I walked out of the theater and I didn't hate it. And Zack Snyder sort of endeared himself to me after that. I enjoyed his 300. His Watchmen, I was very mixed on. I think that any limitations in terms of Zack Snyder and in terms of his, I don't know, I guess his I don't know what we'd call it, but Watchmen's one of my favorite things in the world as far as comic books go, and I felt that his version of Watchmen, all three versions of his Watchmen, were a great recreation of Watchmen, but not necessarily a great adaptation. There were things in it that I didn't approve of, things that I didn't understand, like why use Ride of the Valkyries in your Vietnam sequence, which is a direct reference to another movie about Vietnam. You know, so you're not owning that Vietnam sequence, you're now tying that Vietnam sequence that you've directed in Watchmen irrevocably to Francis Coppola's Apocalypse Now, which is, of course, a fever dream itself about the Vietnam War. I found those things odd choices because they would take me out of the movie. But anyway, I did appreciate what he tried to do with Watchmen. While I didn't find it 100% successful, I do watch it a lot because I do like to see the recreation of the comic books, especially some of the panel-by-panel recreations on screen. Not going to lie, I dig it. And what can I tell you? I've always talked about how much I loved Man of Steel. I love Man of Steel. And I've never understood any of the criticisms leveled at Man of Steel. I've read them. I understand them. But all of the criticisms of Man of Steel are all about how Man of Steel isn't like the other Supermans. Any incarnation of Superman, whether it's in the comics, whether it's the Christopher Reeve Superman, all of the criticisms that are leveled at Man of Steel are all about how Superman isn't like this other incarnation. But I've seen very few criticisms of Man of Steel coming at it from the perspective of the film itself. Like, Man of Steel to me is a recreation of the character of Superman within the framework of Man of Steel. I mean, while we have a whole history of Superman for 80 years now, Man of Steel is a reinvention of all of that mythology within its own framework. That's what it was doing. And within that framework, beginning with what looks like a Krypton from a 70s prog rock album cover to the fight above Metropolis, which for the very first time shows just how deadly such a battle would be. And, I've banged on about, I believe in the killing of Zod. What were you going to do? That doesn't bother me. So that Man of Steel is sort of a hermetically sealed image or vision, Zack Snyder's vision, and at the time Nolan's vision, Christopher Nolan, of what they wanted to do. What if Superman existed in our world or something close to it? So I've always loved it as a science fiction first contact story and a reimagining of Superman in the context of that film. Following that, there was Batman v Superman, which I saw as the second of what I always thought of as Zack Snyder's Man of Steel trilogy. And Batman v Superman, to me, I liked the Ultimate Edition a lot more than the theatrical edition. And I did like Jesse Eisenberg's portrayal of a different kind of Lex Luthor. There are things in there, logic things, that I didn't dig, but there is a feel to it. And it moves away from more of the real world that Man of Steel gave us into a more, I don't know, more of an alternate universe world. But still, I really did enjoy. There is, a painterly, there's a directorial point of view that has a very painterly, epic quality to it. It harks back to Alex Ross's paintings, but without the color. And people could say it was oppressive. But what I was hoping when they announced that Zack Snyder was going to make 2 Justice League movies, I liked the idea that we were going to then have a trilogy, at least, of these 3 films that, in my mind, in my own mind, as a fan, I saw them as Zack Snyder was forging the character of Superman within this trilogy to bring that character more in line to the Superman that we know. Because in Man of Steel, we see a character that had no idea he was an extraterrestrial from Krypton or anything about his history, or that he knew he had powers, but not to what extent, or this kind of thing. And I think that's a really interesting take, just like we've seen different takes of Batman. And it was really, I've wanted to see a Justice League movie my whole life. So when Snyder was replaced and Joss Whedon took over, I never liked that. I was never a fan of that, but that was all we were going to get. And as someone, who understands how movies are made, who's worked on films, who's also been an editor and a post supervisor, I knew that Snyder was really pretty much replaced 4 months after principal photography, which means, if people know anything about how movies are made, there was always a Snyder cut. There was a Snyder cut of Justice League after day 2 of filming. Actually, I've spoken about this a lot, but there was a Snyder cut before they even started filming, because that's how previs works now. Previs in movies, you're laying in pre-visualizations that you're doing, which sometimes your previs shots that are approved go through the entire post process now. You start with certain previses. If you work at a company like the Third Floor, their previs can be pushed up the effects finishing chain, so you can actually have sequences laid down in your timeline when you're editing before you even start shooting. So 4 months after post-production, there was absolutely a cut of Zack Snyder's movie, but it was nowhere near being releasable. And I think the big misconception people had is, yes, you could sit down and watch his movie from beginning to end. And the way previs and effects work now, a lot of it probably looked to the layperson or even people that are in the industry pretty finished. But I knew that it was not. And then after Joss Whedon took over, I didn't think that there would ever be another Justice League movie, much less a Snyder Cut, again, because of how Hollywood works, because of the way deals are made. A Snyder Cut would be basically a whole different movie, especially if they were going to make it 2 hours long or 4 hours long or whatever. But today we had the first extended glimpse of the new film. And Scott Mendelson over at Forbes is already like, well, it doesn't look that different. Well, remember, the basic structure and building blocks of Zack Snyder's Snyder Cut are there in Joss Whedon's Justice League. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it was shot. Yeah, Whedon went in and changed it. But I do believe Zack Snyder's Justice League is going to be vastly different in terms of its feeling, and its portrayal of the characters and the epic nature. Now, I believe that DC Fandome panel is like at 2:30, so after I'm off the show, you can zip on over there and check it out, and they're going to show the trailer, and then, of course, it will be dropped. But I really like what I saw. Again, there's an epic grandeur. Yeah, does it still have the same color palette? It's not as dark as, say, Batman v Superman. It's still Zack Snyder. And if you're not a fan of Zack Snyder, it's not going to win you over. But, yes, you do see Darkseid. And to me, seeing Darkseid, both of these images are actually from the trailer, and it opens with Darkseid, and then one of the final images is of the Justice League standing together. Now, as a lifelong Justice League fan, I'm much more interested. I didn't buy Justice League on Blu-ray. I was so disappointed in that film that I didn't even buy it. And I buy lots of crap. Like, as a matter of fact, I just picked up Band of the Hand on Blu-ray. So you know that, no, by the way, that is not to disparage Band of the Hand, directed by Paul Michael Glaser. I like Band of the Hand, but I'm just saying, I didn't pick up Justice League, which is, I have every other comic book movie. I just didn't get that because I did not like it that much. The movie was, the Henry Cavill face stuff, awful, but I just didn't like the film. Watching the long extended trailer for this Justice League, I'm all in. I mean, come on. It fulfills the promise of authorship that was taken away. And I love the idea. It would not surprise me if we find out that Zack Snyder has also added things to Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition, that tie it all in. So we're going to get a much more fully realized trilogy. Now, I have to say, I have no information to that effect. I have not heard anybody talk about that. I have not read anything about that. But there's 3 versions of Watchmen. There's 2 versions of Dawn of the Dead. I believe there's 2 versions of Sucker Punch. I think there's 2 versions of 300. So it wouldn't surprise me if on HBO Max, look, they're already going to milk this for all it's worth, but the idea that you're not just going to get the Snyder Cut of Justice League, which is going to be, 4 hours, but that we would also get extended versions of Batman v Superman and Man of Steel to tie it all together as Zack Snyder's Man of Steel trilogy. I could see that happening. All I know is that seeing that trailer, the redesign of Steppenwolf, having Darkseid in the film, seeing him, because, you know, you think about the nightmare sequence that we got in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. A lot of people are like, what is that? What, you know, somebody's turning Earth into Apocalypse? And it made no sense. I mean, if you watch, especially in the theatrical version, we comic book nerds like, oh my God, you know, are they going to bring up the anti-life equation? But no, nobody else would have known that. So it's pretty exciting to see all of these things. And I wonder, listening to Walter Hamada talk, here's what excites me about all of this stuff. Now that we know that Ben Affleck is going to be in the Flashpoint movie, and Andy Muschietti talked about, yes, there is time travel involved, and all of his collaborators are very excited about it. I think we're gonna get a really interesting, really special movie with the Flash. But I also think that moving forward, not just the idea of the multiverse, but it's very clear to me that Walter Hamada and his team, Jim Lee, they know what's up. And I think moving forward now that all of the DC films are in my mind as exciting as the MCU going forward. Because as much as I like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, to me, the Marvel Cinematic Universe did something, well, marvelous. 23 movies, those 23 movies as they exist now, I think are fantastic. I mean, you might like some better than others, but overall, it's an incredible achievement. It is monumental in the history of cinema, and the ending of Infinity War and Endgame, and I know the postscript of Spider-Man Far From Home as well. It's astonishing how well it all works, and it's an incredible creative achievement. Now, while I am excited to see whatever they're going to do in the future with Marvel, it doesn't necessarily. It's going to be more, unless they do something groundbreaking with something like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is cool. You know, if Tobey Maguire signs on and they're going to have Andrew Garfield and you see multiple iterations of Spider-Man, well, let me tell you, I'd be like, well, of course they are. Because they have, DC already did it. I understand Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, that was animated. But to do something live action, to plant that flag and put Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton in the same movie as Batman is the final realization of everything we've read from comic books into the animated series. It's the final realization as far as that kind of entertainment goes, and anything else will just be following on the heels of that, depending on what gets made first. I mean, really, but I think more people, the excitement of the Ben Affleck, Michael Keaton news is pretty crazy, because the Marvel Cinematic Universe could show you a multiverse as well. But really, the only thing they can do that's even close to that is putting multiple iterations of Spider-Man, live-action Spider-Man, in a movie together, which wouldn't be surprising anymore. Not in the world we live in now. And I could see, why wouldn't Sam Raimi bring Tobey Maguire back? I could see it happening. It's crazy. So, but I think that the DC Universe films have now become not more interesting than Marvel to me, but maybe more exciting from an intellectual standpoint, and something about my childhood being put up on the screen in ways that I never thought would happen. But yeah, I mean, I'm after this Fandome event, what they wanted to do is get people excited. I haven't seen, I know Black Adam hasn't started shooting, but for what they've done, I'm excited about Suicide Squad more than I've ever been. The cast looks great together. I'm excited about the Flashpoint movie more than I've ever been. I'm certainly excited about the Snyder Cut of Justice League, because I think what we're going to get is the same feeling, the same epic feel. Like, I felt that whether you love Batman v Superman or not, there is a feel to it. Now, I know a lot of people, it's not what they expect from a superhero movie, but for me, who I try and judge everything on its own merits. And I felt that, especially in the Ultimate Cut, there is a feeling that is evoked in that movie. A feeling that, it's kind of like when I saw Star Trek: The Motion Picture. As a kid, it realized the Star Trek universe the way I envisioned it in my mind. Well, the DC universe, there's something about the importance of it, the way that these godlike characters were portrayed in that movie. It's the way I'd always wanted to see it done. And it seems like Zack Snyder is going to bring, I guess, call it grandeur, superhero grandeur, for lack of a better term. There's going to be a grandeur to it that we certainly didn't get in the first iteration of Justice League. And if nothing else, I'm looking forward to experiencing that kind of grandeur. So kudos to everybody involved with the DC Fandome event. A special thanks to all the filmmakers and everybody that came out. Sure, do I know it's a shameless, extended, day-long commercial? Well, yes, but so is Comic-Con. And this was kind of like being in Hall H for Comic-Con. If you ever wanted to know what being in Hall H was like, well, DC Fandom has given you a taste. The Fandome thing, I thought, very well produced, very well done, and thoroughly enjoyed the whole experience. I hope you guys did. I hope you get a chance to check it out. They're replaying all this stuff. You know, and we even heard from Neil Gaiman about the Sandman universe. If you have not listened to the Sandman audio drama, why haven't you? It's 11 hours long, and it is awesome if you like your audio dramas. And if you like the video game, the playing Batgirl and Robin and all the Bat family characters, it looks good. And yes, I know some of the CG and some of the gameplay looked a little dodgy, but the stuff isn't finished yet. And wait and see. Wait and see. So, very exciting. I'm very excited. My old school fanboyness has got me excited. Now, there's something I wanted to read that I read yesterday or 2 days ago that I wanted to share, which is totally a different change of pace. But it's an article that I've been thinking about a lot, and I wanted to share with you. You haven't seen this. This was on Uprocks, not something I usually, it's not my go-to. Mike Ryan, their senior entertainment writer, wrote this. Moral dilemma of Tenet showing in theaters in the middle of a pandemic. It all started on Slack when my editor asked what I had planned for coverage related to Tenet, the Christopher Nolan movie that will be the first noteworthy movie back in theaters in the United States as a pandemic that's killed over 170,000 Americans continues to ravage the country. This is not an unusual question I was being asked, one I've been asked too many times to count, related to whatever movie happens to be coming out soon. But yes, this time was different in that I didn't really have an answer. Eventually, after hemming and hawing, I've admitted I've been giving this one a lot of thought, and I was having a hard time with it morally. The thing I keep asking myself is, if I wouldn't walk into a movie theater right now, how can I cover a movie that might potentially influence someone to do that? And then my editor said, well, why don't you write that piece? So that's what this is. I've had the same thought. I mean, I've told you how much I want to see Tenet. There are now people that are seeing Tenet. It's getting all kinds of wildly divergent reactions from the critical community and the public at large that has seen it, which is not surprising to me. But with a raging pandemic, and we have seen in America, whether it's sporting events, whether it's opening of colleges. Every time gatherings have happened, COVID has spread. This is par for the course. And now we're asking to go to movie theaters, or we're going to movie theaters to see movies, and not in LA and New York yet, but people are going. I'm supposed to go to a movie theater next week with John, and I just think that it's really, I can't justify, as much as I might think of myself as an aging man-child, which I am, I still have to consider my own age and the reality of life, and I can't just willy-nilly go into places and perhaps expose myself to COVID-19. And I don't know if anybody else should. On the other hand, I realize I want movie theaters not to disappear, and people have to go to work, and it's really a tough call. And I keep asking myself, what do I think? And every minute I seem to think differently about it. But anyway, and look, I don't want this to come up like I'm tisking anyone who has already decided they're going to see Tenet in the theater. I just don't want to be a part of anyone's decision-making process, because frankly, the whole thing just doesn't feel right. Well, I guess that's not totally true, because if you ask me if you should go to a theater right now, my answer will be absolutely not. Again, I wouldn't go. So how on earth can I write anything that makes it seem like going to a theater right now is at all normal or a smart thing to do? Honestly, it's pretty unbelievable we're even at a point where this is even happening. It's not only that I wouldn't go, but right now where I live, I can't go. That's where I'm at now, too. New York City will not have open theaters, and Governor Andrew Cuomo recently said, I am sure there is a whole group of people who say I cannot live without going to the movies. But on a relative risk scale, a movie theater is less essential and poses a high risk. It is a congregant. It is one ventilation system. You are seated there for a long period of time, the AV Club asked experts on infectious disease, and the conclusion was, I read this article, of course, on the show, it's just about the last thing I do right now. So this is obviously a dangerous thing to do, but studios and theaters are throttling full speed ahead into the danger because, well, there's money to be made. I stayed in New York City in April and May when the pandemic was at its worst here. If you don't live in New York City, you might be tired of hearing about the nonstop ambulance sirens, but it's true. It was a literal nightmare, and I still have nightmares about it all and probably will the rest of my life. A publicist emailed me about why I was having so much trouble with theaters reopening, and my response was, having a mobile refrigerated morgue truck parked a few blocks from your apartment changes a person. I wasn't trying to be glib, it's just the truth. In April, I remember looking at those trucks and thinking, well, if things go south for me, I guess that's where I'll wind up. Loaded into a truck parked in the street. And back then, I never, ever even considered we'd be trying to come up with an excuse to get a bunch of people together to sit in a room for a couple of hours before this thing was contained. My main wish in life right now is not to see Tenet. My main wish is never to have to experience the nightmare New York City went through in April ever again. And if keeping movie theaters closed, as well as most inside entertainment events, prevents that, which it sure seems like it does, that's what should be done. Now, yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I mean, what I find to be really interesting is our country obviously is going through, it's pretty wacky. You know, we've got the upcoming elections. Everything is so divisive. This pandemic has become totally politicized. The American response to this pandemic has, whatever your political affiliations are, been pretty shameful. We've really dropped the ball. And I understand we all are staunch defenders of personal freedom. I certainly am. I'm a staunch, as you know, believer in the individual. That's why collective ideologies like Marxism is just, come on, man. That's not what we're all about. Unless the sovereign nature of the individual and the individual has the freedom to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness the way they see fit, and they're able to excel in their fields, and that's all I'm interested in. So, yeah. And that's what I want to see, but I get it. I understand. But we are also in a pandemic. And as we are seeing, this is not a pandemic. How we are politicizing it in America is a little silly when we have places like Spain and France that are having resurgences of the virus. They thought they'd beat it. It was gone for 100 days in New Zealand. Uh-oh, then it came back. This is not gone. It's not going to be gone for a while. And as much as I want to see Tenet, and I can taste how much I want to see Tenet, I do feel a lot torn about all this. And, yeah, It's a question that I'm wrestling with. I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you think about it? Are you going to go to the movie theater? Are you going to go see movies? Is that something that you would do? And taking your own, I mean, obviously people can say, well, Rob, 99% of the people don't die. But yes, a lot of people have lingering effects. There are more and more young people getting this disease. More and more young people are dying. And I think it's very interesting that now we think, people are like, well, so many people die of the flu. Look, all the people that die of the flu and car wrecks and alcoholism and heart disease, those are going to stay the same. I get that. But this pandemic is above and beyond those numbers. And we've lost over 170,000 American souls. And it's so weird how that has become the new normal. And people are like, we only lost 58,000 Americans in Vietnam. And, I mean, there were many more casualties, but we many more people that were hurt and wounded. But 58,000 and change Americans died. We've tripled that over our involvement in Vietnam. And Vietnam scarred America. To this day, we are still living with the scars of Vietnam and the soldiers that fought in that war. And now we seem to be so easily able to just dismiss the fact, oh, they had previous conditions. They were going to die anyway. Well, that's easy to say unless it's someone in your family. There's that kid in Atlanta I can't stop thinking about who lost both of his parents in a week. He was 17. Or he is 17. So, it's tough. But what do you guys think? I don't know, to be honest. I just don't know. But I'll tell you what I do know. I've got letters from all of you people, all of you lovely people. And the first person that has written a letter, our trusty friend Dean Mikitich, all the way from the UK. Dean says, hi, Rob and the Post-Geek Singularity. Today I saw Doomcock's video entitled Star Wars Leaks Good News for Mandalorian as Favreau Sides with Fans. Now, I take a lot of what Doomcock says with a grain of salt. Sometimes he's right and sometimes he's wrong. But a lot on what he reports on, we will not know the truth for years and possibly never. Anyway, two things in this video caught my attention. First, the statement made by Jon Favreau to Deadline. I'm going to paraphrase here. In it, he states that you have to embrace the fandom that has kept the franchise alive and respect them. But at the same time, you need to tell stories that people new to the franchise can jump into. This is basically what the Fandom Menace has been fighting for. To be respected, but at the same time, tell good stories in our franchises. You know what? I totally agree with that. I mean, a lot of people, they want to lump me into the Fandom Menace, or I am not a Fandom Menace channel. I don't consider myself part of the Fandom Menace, but I associate with Fandom Menace people because I like them very much. The ones I deal with, I don't know all of the Fandom Menace channels, but whether it's I mean, I'm on Midnight's Edge, obviously, and I do work now with Heel versus Babyface, who I really enjoy. But the Fandom Menace wants just that. And I think all fans, you have to embrace the fandom that has kept the franchise alive and respect them, but at the same time, you need to tell stories that people new to the franchise can jump into. I mean, I'm always attacked for my stance on Star Trek by toxic Star Trek fans who are always coming after me and getting in arguments with me about modern Star Trek. And I feel that one of the things that I don't like about modern Star Trek, aside from the fact that I think it's the writing is bad, is that they're doing everything they can to move away from what the franchise is because they think that is the way to get new viewers. And I think that's completely wrong. So that's what I think. So with Jon Favreau making the statement, do you think that the powers that be and the corporations that own our favorite franchises come to realize what they've been doing with the wokeness is not the right thing to do and are now steering the ship back onto the right course? Could we be getting back to telling good stories and leaving current social justice warrior ideas out so they can bring the fans back and start earning money again? We all know that if they don't, they will end up like two franchises we saw die last year, Charlie's Angels and Terminator, though I can see Charlie's Angels getting another reboot in about 10 years' time. The other thing in Doomcock's video that caught my attention was that everyone working on the production with The Mandalorian will be taking what they did to get the 2020 Formula One season going and taking it to the next level. Doomcock also mentioned that they will be moving production to a disused airbase that was used for Rise of Skywalker and building a village for Season 2 and 3 to be filmed back-to-back. Anyone working on the production will not be able to leave, and anyone not working on the production will not be allowed to enter except for deliveries, food, etc. By the way, this idea of building a village and having barracks and people living there during the entirety of the production has already been used quite successfully by Tyler Perry at his studios in Atlanta, and it works. You know, people have to be sequestered away, and to me, it's like what it's like to be on location. It's just you don't get to leave the studio. But when no one's leaving, and the only thing you're not going out, the risk is mitigated. I think that's probably going to be par for the course for productions for a long while to come. Everyone inside this bubble will be tested daily to make sure they have not contracted the virus, something everyone working at the races for Formula One has had to do, and it worked successfully up to the point with only one person, Sergio Perez, failing a test and was quarantined until he passed with a negative. This meant that he had to miss out on taking part in 2 races. Now, the only disused airbase that was used for the Rise of Skywalker, which I know of, was the Cardington Airfield in Bedford, here in the UK. It's also known as Cardington Studios, which is better known for Christopher Nolan's films Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and Inception, among others. Unless they used a disused airbase in the States for those late pickups in September or October of last year, I'm going to put that to one side and just look at building a village for the cast and crew to live and work on while making the 2 seasons. It's going to cost a fortune, as those facilities are not on site and will have to be built, not to mention bring everyone over from the States to the UK and put them into quarantine for 2 weeks before they can even step foot onto the village, let alone onto the set. There will be no need to bring film crews over, as you know, on all 3 Star Wars trilogies if it was British crews that worked on them. Even if they don't move production here to the UK and can do it in the States, can you see them spending the money to create a bubble to get production back up and running? If they do, can you see other major shows and movies following suit? Peace and long life, Dean M. Well, as I said, they're already doing that. Tyler Perry has already pioneered that here. But here in California, if they keep The Mandalorian here in California, they could shoot it at the old Spruce Goose facilities. There are places where these things can be built here in and around town, and it could happen. It's really just a function of whether or not people are going to be cool doing that. And, you know, maybe they'll have rotating cast or something, or rotating crew members. You'd work maybe 2 months on, 2 months off. I don't know. I do know this. When you're working on production, time bends. Everything seems to be kind of the same. You know, you work 12 hours a day. You don't have much time to do. You pretty much just go home, eat and sleep, and get up and go back and do it again. And I could see that happening. That's what's going to happen. And the thing is, they don't want production to go away because these streaming services that are the future of our industry need new material. So, yeah, I think that can be the new norm. I really do. Let's see, like, who else is here? Well, I already read that letter. That was a good letter, though. And Doc Vader is here. Doc Vader says, "Greetings. Hope that all are well, safe, and hydrated. Rob, I just wanted to get your thoughts on Alfred Bester's The Stars, My Destination. Amen. I consider this one of my favorites. The protagonist's transformation, primarily because of rage, very much intrigues me. Moreover, would you consider a culture's inability to produce science fiction movies is caused by the lack of strengths in the fields of science and technology? Mahue at Yamabong, live long and prosper. Mabuhay at Yamabong. Okay, that was pretty good. Mabuhay at Yamabong, live long and prosper. Doc Vader. Good questions all. Obviously, I think you're referring to, once again, the show I did about the Chinese government beginning a mandate to make science fiction movies. The thing is, what's so funny to me about that is, as I mentioned on the show, is that science fiction as a genre, so much of it has to deal with an individual fighting for their individuality. And it just amuses me to no end that the Chinese think that they can change their culture, change their culture by making science fiction, because at some point, if they think that science fiction is all like The Wandering Earth, they've got something coming. You know, show movies like THX 1138 and go, do you want us to make science fiction movies like that? And watch the government scream, no, we don't want you to make those kind of science fiction movies at all. We want you to make the good kind that we like. I don't necessarily think that great science fiction requires a culture be all about science and technology? I mean, it helps, but I think what good science fiction is about is almost the same thing. It stems from the same place that religion comes from. You know, you look up at the stars and you start asking yourself, what's out there? And how does it relate to me? Can I ever get out there? And if I can't, then why am I going to be taunted by the stars my whole existence? And I think it's questions about existence that form the basis of science fiction. I mean, one of my favorite definitions, and I paraphrase, Brian Aldiss said that science fiction is an attempt to make sense of the world around us, the human experience, in our confused state of knowledge and technology. That's what science fiction is all about. And I do think, I mean, obviously science and technology play a big part of it, because a lot of science fiction is about the future, or it's about super technology, things that we'd love to have, like time machines. God damn it, I wish I could have fixed this thing I had or did. I wish I didn't say that. I wish I could go back in time and rectify that situation. I wish I could go back, a decade and make it better with the girl I loved and we could have been married, or whatever it is. Or why can't I travel to that planet? Or can I, whatever. Can I save a loved one who died and I wasn't there for her or wasn't there for him and they passed away? Is there a way I can have technology and resurrect them or something? So that's where I think the impulse to come up with science fiction is. By the way, for those of you who don't know, The Stars, My Destination was written by a guy named Alfred Bester. Now, it was written in the 50s. Hang on a second. Let me... And I believe Oliver Stone at one point, it might have been The Demolished Man he was making. I could be right. I could be wrong about this. But what's interesting about The Stars, My Destination here, let me just read from Wikipedia. The Stars, My Destination anticipated many of the staples of the later cyberpunk movement. For instance, the megacorporations as powerful as government, a dark overall vision of the future, and the cybernetic enhancement of the human body. Bester added to this mix the concept that human beings could learn to teleport or jaunt from point to point, provided they know the exact locations of their departure and arrival and have physically seen the destination, similar to A.E. Van Vogt's Gilbert Gossen in the 1948 novel The World of Null A. But it's basically about a guy who's lacking in imagination, as it says here. Gulliver Foyle, who was introduced with, he was 170 days dying and not yet dead. I love this book. It's a fantastic science fiction novel, but man, I read this. This is one of the books, one of the canonical works that I got from the Science Fiction Book Club that I read in junior high school, and I don't remember much of it. I think it would make a great movie, though. And you should all read it if you're interested at all in classic science fiction. Alfred Bester's The Stars, My Destination. Check it out. Read it. Jared M. Snyder is here and says, Dear Rob and my fellow imagination connoisseurs, here's my elevator pitch of the week. Downton Abbey 67. All right. The show opens in the spring of 1967. The estate is run down. The servants are ancient and doddering. The residents live in the past. An anonymous buyer has purchased the long-empty neighboring estate. They invite English nobleman and longtime family friend Lord Such for the dinner, since he is thought to be worldly. Lord Such arrives in his Union Jack-painted Rolls-Royce. He is a Brian Jones lookalike in full Summer of Love regalia. I love that. The dinner discussion first centers on how all the young family members are off in swinging London. Yeah, baby. What could be the appeal? Lord Such announces that Keith Moon purchased the estate and offers to make introductions. A phone call announces the return of the Londoners along with their psychedelic friends. It's going to be a real summer of love in Downton Abbey. There's your ad line. What is it? What was it? Drop in and tune out or something? What follows are a series of outrageous parties with guests like George and Patty Harrison, Eric Clapton, Mick and Keith, Jimi Hendrix, and numerous party crashers who... You got to have Petula Clark. and numerous party crashers who interact with the family and staff. The climax is a wild party at Keith Moon's, complete with fireworks and Moon driving his Bentley into his newly finished swimming pool. The theme music rises as we see an aged Lady Mary tripping her brains out as she wanders through the grounds, and an artful retrospective of prior episodes runs through her mind. Any takers? Much thanks for all you do, Rob. Jared M. Snyder, project manager by day and music historian by night. Jared, I buy your pitch. I'm in. Downton Abbey 67. They don't call it the Summer of Love for nothing. I mean, come on. I would love to see that. And all the figures you've mentioned, all the whole rock and roll swinging London scene of the late 60s. I mean, come on. Who wouldn't love that? I would love that. Desmond is here. Desmond says, "Hi, Toy Man." Hello. What's going on with recent Star Trek? I keep seeing adverts of Star Trek games marketed as Starship Battle Action and Conquest, a new animated show trying to force funny and dialogues been done at 100 miles an hour without allowing for situational depth or organic growth. To be fair, Episode 3 of Lower Decks was shockingly not horrible to me. Credit where credit is due. Then there's the constant push, slapping, and references to other memorable Star Trek situations or characters leading to the end result of really weak storytelling and suspension of disbelief. By the time the show ends, I ask, what was the episode about and what did it bring to the table? Clearly, the show is not for me. I totally agree. I think the references, the meta references to other Star Trek shows are annoying and uncreative. I was hoping that Star Trek Lower Decks would forge its own identity. Sure, it could be comedic or whatever, but it would still exist in the canonical Star Trek universe. It does not. It is a meta, self-reflexive show that is more of a commentary on the Star Trek franchise than anything else. Although, they are going to be telling stories that I think work. I just wish that they would do one or the other. So, I took the time to watch Discovery Season 1. That was really a complete decrease, and I cannot recommend watching or continuing. Once again, I can barely remember what the show's story was really about. What was it about? Recent Star Trek comes across as tabloid gossip, then forgotten about after 3 minutes, as it seems to be checking tick boxes for agendas or politically correct topics, which overshadows the fundamental thing, telling a compelling story with suspension of disbelief. I get the impression present Star Trek doesn't know what it is or what it wants to be. Oh, you nailed that one. It's trying to scramble for whatever gives it so-called attention, like a cheap knockoff on animation themes or the person who's trying to be something they're not. I'm watching The Next Generation sequentially, and each episode is fascinating, seems to have purpose, stories that address challenges that you, the viewer, ask yourself, what would you do? As these are challenges that are relevant even in today's climate. For instance, the handling of space drug dealers, societies who steal technology, not developing themselves or fully understanding the impacts, or the ethics of stealing DNA to repopulate a species, then trying to find viable long-term solutions that can be agreed upon. Your thoughts, Desmond? Well, look, I too. Elizabeth watched the original series sequentially, and she's in the middle, toward the end of season 2 of Next Gen. By the way, I have to say, even though the last time I watched all the way through Next Gen was when I was working on the Blu-rays, I was looking at the episodes for quotes and things I would pull for the documentaries, but I now sitting down and watching them again. Like we watched the Icarus Factor last night, the one where Kyle Riker comes, Riker's father, and he's had a previous relationship with Dr. Pulaski. That episode never really floated my boat, but watching it last night, I'm like, this is pretty good. It dealt with interesting themes. Here's my problem with modern Star Trek. It's not really about anything. And like you said, when you watch an episode of Star Trek, it deals with specific themes. It explores those themes in the context of the episode. Remember, Star Trek is basically an anthology show. And every week there was a new mission, a new adventure, something new to address. And it was an action-adventure, allegorical anthology show, which it had returning characters. And it would delve into these issues and examine them from various ways. And even watching early Next Gen, the episodes are fulfilling. And I think one of the things about modern Star Trek is is they've tried to make modern Star Trek like other things that aren't Star Trek. Just like Lower Decks is embracing the modern animation form and trying to apply the modern animation form to Star Trek, as opposed to making an animated Star Trek show that embraces what Star Trek is into its own version of animation. And I think what modern Star Trek, this is what, to me, all modern Star Trek has been since 2009. They're taking other things like, oh, let me look at the Top Gun paradigm, and I'm going to go write that within a Star Trek context. Where before, Star Trek would be like, okay, we're going to tell an allegorical story about our characters, and when they would move out, like, okay, what can we do within that context? The original series would look at, say, a submarine story and turn it into Balance of Terror. But instead of going out and grabbing something and pulling it back and trying to make it work within Star Trek, they started with Star Trek and said, okay, we want to do these kinds of stories. What can we look to? And they did. And then they would adapt outside things to Star Trek when now they're doing it the reverse. They think this Star Trek formula is old and stodgy, the allegorical stories that inform our present. They don't like that. They're trying to go out and use other things and pull them in and turn them into Star Trek instead of beginning with Star Trek and going out. And I think that's the big problem. And it's interesting going back and watching Star Trek, because what you got at the end of a Star Trek episode was you had something that felt fulfilling. And I don't think any modern Star Trek has felt fulfilling at all. And the reason I think they concentrate on video games, look, video games have to have conflict. You're playing a game. You know, it's hard to, we're going to go explore this land. You know, it's different. So they concentrate on the combat aspects of that because it has built-in, there's built-in gameplay, I guess. But modern Star Trek, it hasn't been good because they're trying to do something else. Let's make it like Game of Thrones. Let's make it like all these other shows rather than, I mean, you can do a great Star Trek show, but if you watch a Star Trek episode, if you watch Next Gen, you watch the original series, there's a template there. That's what Star Trek is. And all of these like Bad Robot and Secret Hideout, they would do any kind of a show. Alex Kurtzman wants to make a Star Trek musical. Why not do a Star Trek sitcom? Why not do the Jeffersons in space? You know, why not do that? Because that's not what Star Trek is. And they're trying to use any form they can and make it Star Trek. What they're doing is they're diluting what Star Trek is. They're ruining it, in my mind. What you need, again, like I've said it before, you need listening to Walter Hamada talk about how they're going to make DC multiverse movies for the cinemas. Hopefully they'll be in the cinemas. I'm like, okay, that guy gets it. I have never heard anybody who's working on current Star Trek ever talk about Star Trek in a way that makes me believe that they understand or have even watched a lot of Star Trek. With maybe the possible exception of Michael Chabon. But again, he's bringing it through his own prism of what he wanted Star Trek to be. As opposed to during the Berman era, Rick Berman worked under Roddenberry, so everything was sort of filtered through the idea that we need to ultimately preserve Roddenberry's ideals in what's going on. And there is a complete desire to move away from that. Modern Star Trek. And that's why in the Berman era, as much as it was sometimes got hit and miss, like with Enterprise, and people say, well, Rob, you know, Deep Space Nine was so dark. No, Deep Space Nine was an interesting examination of, as I've said before, what do people who live in a utopian, where you don't have to worry about scarcity, utopian civilization, how do they deal with the onslaught of a galactic war? How do they retain their utopian ideals, the Roddenberry-esque ideals in the face of this onslaught? And they're not doing that with modern Star Trek, and I think it's frustrating to me. Let's see what you guys are saying over here in the chat. Let me jump back and see where we are at. I know that Claude sends in a tip. This is from a couple days ago. Cool. Turns out Claudius is a bully. Great. Robservations isn't even a safe space at this point. Well, I hope it is. That's why I have a great moderating staff. But when I say safe space, I don't believe in intellectual safe spaces. In terms of what I want the Post-Geek Singularity to be, and you imagination connoisseurs, when you come in here and you're going to be in the live chat, bring your A game. You know, don't just hurl things at people. This is all about conversation. It's all about listening and having dialogue. Claudius goes on to say, he sends in a tip and says, it's hard for me to accept DC movies. I am one of those angry nerds. Well, I mean, I can understand that. I get that. But look, I'm excited. I'm excited about where the DC franchise seems to be headed under Walter Hamada's leadership. Bunyan Snipe sends in a tip and says, I think Affleck will appear at the start of the movie in a cameo that represents the DCEU status regard circa Justice League and the current movies. I agree, but I also think that there's going to be a clear friendship established between the Flash and Bruce Wayne, you know, whether it's Barry Allen and Bruce Wayne. And I think what it's going to do is it has to lay the groundwork of the universe that we lose because of the Flashpoint paradox. So I think we're going to see it a pretty fully realized version, and then I think that we're going to come back to that universe as well to show us the status after Flashpoint. So, as I've said, I'm convinced more than ever that Ben Affleck is going to be in the movie, not for 5 minutes, but for probably 15 to 20 minutes, and it's because you need that setup before you destroy it. Keaton will be in one of the other realities that Barry visits, and either Pattinson or another actor will be Batman at the end of the movie, and that's who will be playing him going forward. Thomas Jane, maybe? That's an interesting idea, but I don't think so. I think that Barry Allen exists in that universe. He's from the universe. Now we have the multiverse. So after listening to Walter Hamada today, I think it's going to be, we're going to see Ben Affleck at the beginning and the end of the film. Jason Bueno sends out a super chat to me and says, Rob, is it just me or is there a kinetic energy to DC movies right now? Can't wait to see what else is coming with DC Fandome. Look, as I said, I think the DC movies that are coming are creative. They've gone back to their roots. They're embracing the multiverse. And I think that they really have an interesting take on what they're doing. And like you, I am excited. I am very, very excited where they're going. I think it's great. Willow asking the easy questions. I haven't addressed this. What is your take on the controversy surrounding the French film, and I can't pronounce this, Cuties? Do you think that Netflix has really botched the marketing? However, I do also feel that people are rushing to cancel the film and its director without having watched it. Okay. So for those of you who might not, maybe been under a rock for a couple days, there is a film that is dropping on Netflix called Cuties. And it's directed by a woman of color. It's a French film. And it's all about a little girl from a Muslim family who has to come to grips with Western values, and she sees a dance crew, and she wants to be a part of it, but it goes against her own religious beliefs, her family's religious beliefs. Now, the movie was apparently pretty good, and it's a coming-of-age story. However, you've got 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old girls twerking and being part of a dance crew. When Netflix picked up this movie, and they started marketing this film, it looks like a pedophile's wet dream. The marketing is so beyond. It was in such bad taste that there was a massive online backlash with people I even know and respect a great deal who were jumping on and rightfully so, condemning Netflix for sexualizing the girls. I mean, their official poster for the movie is shameful. I mean, it really is shameful. And the way they were selling it, which, by the way, to me is a complete misrepresentation of what the film's about. Now, I haven't seen the film, but from what I understand, it is not about, it doesn't sexualize these girls at all. As a matter of fact, it's directed by a woman of color. I believe she's actually really from Africa as well. So that's what it is. Now, in my mind, I think the marketing of this film that Netflix has done has been shameful. and actually finding out what the movie's about, I'm like, oh, maybe that could be a good movie. And I think you're always on a slippery slope if you're condemning a film without having seen it. But this marketing campaign, especially if you look and you find, which I did, you find the original French marketing. It's very, very different. It looks much more innocent than it is. So I think, again, look, I don't think the outrage was misplaced. I think how Netflix was trying to sell this movie, the poster, as a matter of fact, you know what? Let's put it up there in case you haven't. I mean, who hasn't seen this yet? Because it's everywhere, but might as well show it so you can see what Willow is talking about. And, Netflix has been apologizing. So, here, I'm going to put this up. You can see this real quick. So, these are the two posters. One is what I'm about to put up is the original French version, and the other is the Netflix version. So, yeah, this is, wow. All right. So, let's make this bigger so you can see. It's kind of a low resolution thing. But here is the juxtaposition of how these films are being sold. Here was the original French version that played at Sundance, and then on the right is the American version. I think it's pretty apparent what people are up in arms over, and I would be too. I'm honestly baffled by, and this looks like it was a photo shoot, maybe it's photoshopped, but it was done for the movie, whereas the French version shows the innocence of young girls coming back shopping. I find this, I have no idea who thought that was a good, and if you see the trailer, same thing. I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but shocking. However, if the film isn't like that, it's too bad that this controversy has erupted, or maybe not, because it'll get all eyes on the film and people realize that it is a good film, that it really has something to say about the sexualization of young girls or something that might be helpful. But it's crazy. Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, I am looking forward to the scenes between the two Oscar-nominated actresses, Rosamund Pike and Sophie Nito, in an upcoming TV series that I'm enthusiastic about. I won't tell you what series, though. Let me guess, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know, Stubble McShave is a cornerstone member, a foundational member of the Post-Geek Singularity, and Stubble McShave is probably, I mean, I don't know why, but somebody needs to tap him. He's one of our favorite Swedes. We have many. I never thought I would have many favorite Swedes, but I do. Just like I have many favorite Germans, all from the audience. But Stubble McShave is, of course, talking about his most eagerly awaited television series in all of creation ever, which is the adaptation of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, which is getting made. And look, I'll watch anything Rosamund Pike is in, to be honest. So I'm with you right there. Willow says, also, someone told you that you look like Steve Bannon. Why? Because all middle-aged white men look the same? Laugh out loud. To be honest, I did used to mix you up with Chris Gore. Well, it's funny. I have to make the joke, but there was an old girlfriend of mine mixed me up with Chris Gore, too. Oh, you're terrible, Muriel. But Chris Gore's been a friend of mine for 30 years, so, I'm happy to be mixed up with Chris. Sub McShave goes on and says, if they're not making at least 2 hours of special features and documentaries on Snyder's Justice League on HBO Max, they're idiots. It could be made for small change compared to the show itself. Man, I would love to have made that documentary. Still can. Dan V sends in a tip and says, I will say that I'm excited for the Suicide Squad, where the opening scene of a team getting wiped out should be fun. The Steppenwolf design isn't new and is in the ultimate cut of Batman v Superman. It is, it's true. It's weird that Ezra's incident wasn't addressed. I'm in on the film. Well, Dan is referring to Ezra Miller had that weird choking incident in Iceland. Here's my thoughts on this. This is my thoughts about you know what? People get in shit all the time. They get in fights. I don't know what Ezra Miller was doing. I don't know what precipitated that, but I've been a fan of Ezra Miller. Look, he had this thing happen. It was investigated. They looked into it. And it was apparently fine. I don't think that Ezra Miller, look, what he did was bad. I don't know why he choked out some girl, a fan, at some bar. He was drunk or whatever the hell he was doing. It was bad. It was really bad. And I think it was bad. I don't know what that has to do with him working or his livelihood. Just like, I think we're now starting in our society, in our weird cancel culture society, we conflate things that people do in their lives that are bad with who they are as people for the rest of time. And I don't think that's true. I've done things in anger, and I've done things of questionable judgment. But if I was always, I've even been in fights. I was in high school. I got suspended for hitting a girl. Do you know why I hit a girl? She came up and kicked me in the balls and then jumped on me. Yeah, I know, right? I was that irresistible, and I kind of lashed out. I mean, I didn't mean to hit her, but we had problems with one another since we were in second grade, and so this was actually in high school, and she really pretty much attacked me unprovoked. I mean, I didn't really mean, but I got in trouble for it. And if somebody had a tape, if somebody had video of that, you would have seen me on the ground with a girl on top of me hitting me, and me literally hitting a girl in the face. Now, I was in horrible pain and all of that, but it wouldn't have looked good. It wasn't a good look. I still to this day don't know why she kicked me in the balls. This was when I was a sophomore in the 10th grade. So it was very weird. Now, that incident, I had to pay for that incident, and then it was forgotten. But she even came to my college, the college I went to for a while. And it was weird. But, you pay the price and you move on. Why anybody should be... I mean, Ezra Miller's tried to get the Flash movie made for years. This one incident, depending on what it was investigated, and people are like, okay, it was bad. It was bad. It looked bad. It was bad. But it's over and done with. It's in the past, and the powers that be investigated. They deemed Ezra Miller okay to continue working. Why should his whole life be sacrificed? Why should anybody's whole life be sacrificed for incidents that happen? I mean, unless you have totally transgressed and killed somebody, our society is becoming dangerous in that way. But look, do I think anybody should abuse women? No. What he did was horrible. I don't understand why he did it. I have no clue. I wasn't there. I certainly would never do that. I don't know what precipitated that. I really don't. And it was bad. But apparently, do I think anybody... Look, it's a tough call. It is a tough call. But I can't wait to see the movie. But I think that, look, Warner Brothers, you think that with all of the stuff that's going on in our culture right now, that if there was any hint that Ezra Miller did something that was systemic to his person and that he had a history of abuse or a history of hitting women or doing horrible things, that Warner Brothers would have allowed this movie to move forward? They wouldn't have. After an investigation, they were satisfied that they could move forward. Just like after cooler heads prevailed, James Gunn was able to direct Suicide Squad. Dan V goes on to say, the worst review of Tenet came from IndieWire with calling it humorless. Since when did any film need to be funny? It feels like certain critics are using this as a way to bash Nolan as a gotcha, which doesn't sit well with me. Judgeth the movie on its merits. Well, Dan, I agree with you 100%. I used critics' opinions as a gauge, but nothing replaces what it's like to go see a movie on your own. No one else's opinions ever sways whether I want to see a movie. Now, Elizabeth sometimes says to me that I have a friend, and I've made assumptions about a movie, but if my friend, who I trust implicitly with his taste, if he tells me that something is disappointing, I will listen to him and I'll be like, okay, then the desire for me to see whatever that thing is, even if I was very excited to see it, if he tells me it's not so good and it's just going to be disappointing, then sometimes I'm like, oh man, and I won't go see it. But I don't trust any critics anymore, especially critics that are younger than me, that there is a, and this is not, I'm not, please don't take this the wrong way, but people's tastes, the way they've been forged over the last 30 years, are different, especially when it comes to genre cinema, than people who are older. And there's a lot of people that just, they don't have the depth of knowledge. They haven't seen a lot of movies, so they're suspect. And I have to go see it. But yeah, I will judge that movie on its own merits, Dan. Eric Gant sends in a super chat and says, I'd love to see New Mutants in a drive-in, but pass on theaters, for now at least. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to tell John I can't go to Vegas. Elizabeth's going to freaking kill me anyway. I can't do it. I don't think I can do it. Swack Props sends in a tip and says, I just checked Amazon. A good quality hazmat suit costs about $30, and a full face 3M respirator is about $160. Question is, should I spend almost $200, which is roughly 850 Malaysian ringgit, just to watch Tenet? Well, it won't be just to watch Tenet. Wear it to the movie theaters for the rest of the year. If No Time to Die is going to open, now that you've told me that, I think I might have to do that. I would totally wear that to a movie theater. I'd totally do that. That I would feel better about. A complete hazmat suit and a full-on 3M respirator, as long as it didn't make noise. That's actually... Cal from Swack Props, you have got me sold. By the way, for those of you who don't remember, Cal from Swack Props, another foundational member of the Post-Geek Singularity, at his Etsy store has... he makes prop books. And his prop books, he gifted me with one of his 9 gates from the Ninth Gate. The fact that anybody, first of all, makes replicas of the Ninth Gate in itself is insane. And by the way, he's not the only one. But Swack Props makes the best prop books of all time. His work is just amazing. My friend Cliff Stevenson, I don't know if he has it yet, but ordered a Grail diary. Cal does a Grail diary from Last Crusade. I mean, you got to see this. And I read Swack posted a customer review of one of his 9 gates, and they were, again, waxing rhapsodic about his work. It's amazing. If you've ever wanted to buy a prop replica book from a movie to have, he's your man. Go to Swack Props, S''WAK, first word, second word is props. He has an Etsy store. Go check it out. Good stuff. Scott Brooks sends in a super chat and says, why do you think Marvel is staying so quiet about their slate of content when DC is doing something like Fandom? Because they don't have to say anything. You know? I mean, Marvel is just nose to the grindstone. You know, let DC have their time. They don't know what they're going to do. They're in a holding pattern now. They don't know when Black Widow's coming out. They don't know about Eternals. They don't know about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Believe me, Marvel's going to come out guns blazing. They know what they're doing. They're just hanging back right now. And, we'll see. Dan V says, I'm sorry, but Mandalorian Season 2 is not filmed back-to-back with Season 3. Season 2 is filming when Season 1 dropped last year. I don't understand how Doomcock comes up with his info since it's false. I haven't seen that report, but yeah, they did film Season 2 already. It's the principal photography is finished. Dan V goes on to say, Zack Snyder responding to Scott Mendelson and saying his Justice League film is for grown-ups came across as very pretentious. He far too often believes his films are deeper than they actually are, and plenty of Saturday morning cartoons are more adult than his films. Well, Dan, a filmmaker who's going to work on a movie for so many years, I mean, you put your heart and soul into it. And, also, look at Zack Snyder. He's a dude. And it's like, Mendelson is saying in his column, well, it doesn't look like we're getting much new. Zack Snyder, not only did he have to deal with the death of a family member, not only did he have this movie that was the culmination of 3 movies taken away from him, he had to endure the final product that came out that wouldn't be anything near what he'd make. I mean, it had to be amazingly frustrating. So Malbrain sends in a super chat and says, There's more to Chinese sci-fi, Rob. The Three-Body Problem, and I can't pronounce this name, Cixin Liu, was a great novel and won the Hugo. I have that. It's part of, I don't have, I think it's part of a trilogy. I agree with you. There's great Chinese sci-fi, but will the Chinese government allow that kind of movie to be made? They might, actually. I think that they're going to adapt that book. But I think the Chinese government is, there's lots of great genre cinema. China has all kinds of great science fiction. But I just don't think if the government starts mandating a science fiction film effort that they're going to necessarily be happy with everything that people would make. But yes, The Three-Body Problem is something I would recommend everybody should read. Scott Brooks sends in a tip and says, why do you think Marvel is being so quiet about their content slate when you have DC doing something like Fandom? Marvel could easily do a similar event with panels and such. Oh, they have in the past. Like when they announced, I think, Phase 3, they did do that very thing. It was a live panel. They'll probably do something like that. They've also got D23, and they will. And I think, again, they're just waiting. Like I was saying, Marvel, they're in a holding pattern. They've got 2 films. I mean, hopefully they'll drop an Eternals trailer, but they had Black Widow that we were supposed to see 3 months ago that we didn't. That's ready to go. I think what they're doing is they're waiting to find out what's going to happen because they've got WandaVision coming. They've got they have Falcon and Winter Soldier coming. They've been shooting Shang-Chi. They've got a lot going on. Thor Love and Thunder is going to start shooting. They've got so much going on that they're just waiting because right now they're just in a holding pattern. And that's why I think that they're sort of chilled out right now. Swack Props sends in a tip and said, Idris Elba should star in a spin-off Bond movie as 008. In the Bond movies, 008 is Bond's backup, and M even says 008 follows orders, not instincts. 008 sounds like the ultimate blunt instrument, a total badass, probably named Dick Steele or something. Idris Elba is Dick Steele. No, I like that idea. You know, they were going to do a Jinx spinoff. Why not make an Idris Elba in a Bond spinoff movie? Make him another 008. I like that. Just like we're getting that already in the new Bond film. But I like that idea. Why not? Yeah. Phage Lives sends in a super chat and says, I think Star Trek 09 is a decent popcorn flick. The kid driving as a kid kept it from being good. Yeah, that was really stupid. See, I don't think Star Trek 09 is a decent popcorn flick to me. I can't. I understand why people like it and they don't have an attachment to it. To me, it doesn't stand on its own. Carl Urban and everyone like he's just like Dr. McCoy. He's doing an impression of Dr. McCoy. I mean, I would like to have seen and Kirk is a character who walked off another movie. He's not James T. Kirk from the Star Trek franchise. He's Maverick from Top Gun. And that drives me crazy. But I'll tell you, what I really hated is the villains. The villains in Star Trek 09 are the worst kind of mustache-twirling villains. They're not interesting at all. And the fact that they've traveled back in time and they never think about saving the whole reason Nero's mad is because his homeworld was destroyed by the Hobus star going Nova. Here he goes back in time almost 100 years. Does he go to warn his home planet? No. He just bitches and moans and complains and goes destroys other people's planets when he could actually go fix the very thing that's the problem. But he doesn't do that. And so I don't like that. But, you know, I understand a lot of people do. That's just me. Michael Preston sends in a super chat and says, the problem I always had with Steppenwolf is they never needed Superman to defeat him. Darkseid, they need Superman to stop him. I agree with you. And also, Steppenwolf didn't have much of a character. It was so weird. Anonymous Nerd sends in a tip and says, at DC Fandome, Jim Lee just said there was verisimilitude for the character of Batman, and I instantly thought of you. Well, thank you. Absolutely. Swack Prop says, hey, Rob, guest suggestions for the 500th show interviews Mark Zakri and Kamran Pasha. Yeah, those are good. Those are good choices. I don't know Mr. Pasha, but I do know Mark Zakri. You know, I don't know if I'm going to do interviews yet. I've got a few pending, but honestly, I don't know. Maybe we'll see. I feel woefully. I know I should be more prepared for the 500th show, but I made such a big deal out of the 400 show, and that took me so much. It was so much work to do. I just don't know. I don't know. We'll see. It's coming. This is show number 494. I got 6 more shows to do. The 500th show is going to be next weekend. So, yep. It's either going to be Saturday or Sunday. We'll see. 500 show, Saturday or Sunday next week. Royce Freeman sends in a super chat and says, what are your thoughts on Keaton Batman being used in future DCEU films like Nick Fury? I think that could be kind of cool, but I do think that the Batman that Batman is going to be on a different Earth. So the DCEU Earth is not going to be that Earth, and I think they should use Ben Affleck in that role. If they wanted to. But we'll see. I mean, again, I don't know what they're going to do and how they're going to approach it. Dan V says, I did not mean to imply that Ezra Miller should be canceled with the incident, but simply apologizing for his actions would have been enough. Not acknowledging it in any way was just strange to me, like it never happened. Yeah, but if you think about it, why does Ezra Miller have to apologize to people that he... Like, I understand we have our social media world, but it really, even though it was put out there on social media, why does Ezra Miller owe us an apology? I mean, he's working for DC. He's being paid by Warner Brothers. If anything, he should apologize to them. To us, I mean, yeah, we all saw the video, but he has no connection to us. He doesn't owe me anything. I might have watched the video, but I again, why people should have to apologize to the public at large for their behavior. I mean, unless they did something that directly affected, like, I'll give you an example. What's going on with the Ellen DeGeneres show? Ellen DeGeneres has been creating a narrative the entire time she's been on her show. And then if that same show that has been going out to the world, that gets everybody excited about her 10 days of giveaways or whatever, and you believe in Ellen, and then you find out that workplace was actually toxic and people are stepping down, that's something I think Ellen should apologize for, because she's let the public down. Because the thing that Ezra Miller certainly hasn't, his work has been great. I like his work. I love his performance, and we have to talk about Kevin or the perks of being a wallflower. But does he owe anybody else anything? I don't think so. There was an incident that happened that he was a part of, and I just don't think that he owes the world at large an apology for that. Just like if I get mad at somebody or in my own personal life, or I don't feel that I can't come on this show. I apologized because I had a public spat with somebody in June, and they took within Twitter. I felt, and then I was on Twitter publicly. I said "fuck you" to a colleague. Of course, he also, retweeted me and portrayed me as somebody that I'm not on purpose. But I lashed out at him, and I felt like I also my original tweet when I tweeted that video of David Dorn, Captain David Dorn, which got me so upset. I did not do a good job of conveying what I was trying to convey, which was, where are you Second Amendment advocates when, people thought I was advocating killing looters. I was only speaking about this one incident, and I was saying, look, shoot to kill. If somebody, otherwise, David Duke armed robbers went to specifically, they were not protesters. They under the cover of the protests, they went to rob a store. They went to commit armed robbery. And Captain David Duke, David Dorn, Captain David Dorn, who was the father of 5 and the grandfather of 10, was murdered, straight up murdered by armed robbers. And when I saw the video of him on the street corner dying alone, it was very upsetting to me, and I was angry, and I was trying to make the point, where are all you gun owners now when you're always talking about how you have to save or protect your property? Nobody was there to protect him. And that's what I was angry about. I was trying to be ironic about it as well. Like, I don't think, I just didn't do a very good job. But David Dorn lost his life and no one was there to protect him. And that's why I was upset. And it was one tweet. I was specifically referring to that incident. The tweet that I made went with that video, and when that video was removed and somebody was just taking my tweet, it was out of context. But I apologize. I believe that I should have apologized publicly for that because I was doing it publicly, and I was involving everyone else in the spat. By doing that, it becomes a public thing. That's why I put up that apology video. But I don't think that Ezra Miller owes anybody an apology for what he did, other than the people that are involved with the incident that know what happened. So, you know. Anonymous sends in a tip and says, "Hi, Rob. Evening from the UK. I recommended a few weeks back Netflix's Dark. You may have already spoken about this. Oh, Elizabeth and I, Dark is going to be the next thing we watch. I haven't seen season 3 yet. I love Dark. Dark's amazing, and I can't believe I haven't got to season 3. But yes, I'm interested to learn what Dark did for you, the writers' world building, and their take on time travel. Oh no, I can tell you that their world building and their take on time travel is phenomenal, and I can't wait to see how it all wraps up. I just haven't got to it yet because Elizabeth hasn't seen it, so we have to go back and I have to watch it. I have to watch season 1 and 2 together because we watched the shows together. Darth Poncho sends in a tip and says, "After your show today, I'm going to watch Revenge of the Sith. I decided to watch all the Star Wars films in numerical order for the first time. I watched The Phantom Menace on Thursday. After some thought, I think I will stop after Return of the Jedi. A happier ending." Well, you're right about that. 100%. I totally agree with you. It does have a happier ending. Let's see. I'm going to go back to letters. Why not? This next letter comes from Calvin Bowes. "Rob, I thought I would tell you about my memories of going to the kiddie matinee as a kid of 6. We used to have a kids show in Phoenix called Wallace and Ladmo that aired Monday through Friday. On Saturday mornings, they would appear at the Fox Christian Theater. The theater was always packed, so you showed up at 9 a.m. for a 10:30 showing. I remember my mom would give me $1, as it cost 50 cents to get in and 50 cents for a popcorn and a Coke. Oh, those were the days. The show would begin by showing 5 cartoons, usually Warner Brothers, and then would come the cereal. I remember seeing King of the Rocket Men and also Captain Marvel. The Adventures of Captain Marvel is one of the great unsung superhero. Well, it's a serial from the 40s, but it's great. I love it. After that, we would see Wallace and Ladmo, and they would do a live show and give away prizes. I once won a hula hoop at one of these shows. Now we have an intermission, followed by the feature, sometimes a monster movie like Horror of Dracula, or a Western like Roy Rogers, or a Godzilla movie, and if you were lucky, we saw my favorite Tarzan movie. I remember it was a lot of fun. Too bad there's nothing like this today. One little side thing, Wallace and Ladmo was the longest running TV kids show, local kids show. It ran from 1953 to 1989. Wow. And one of the show's biggest fans was Steven Spielberg. You can find clips of this show online. Did they have anything like this when you were a kid where you lived? Well, there was when I was growing up in Seattle, there was a clown called J.P. Patches. And he would do events, he would appear places, but he didn't do like a weekly show. It wasn't like Sven Gulli, but I love J.P. Patches. And I don't remember much about J.P. Well, since we have the newfangled internet, this crazy device, J.P. Patches. Let me see what it says about J.P. Patches. And let me read. First of all, wait a second. I need to get a picture of J.P. Patches and Gertrude so you can see it. So in Seattle, this is what I grew up with. J.P. Patches. And I will read you the wiki. Man, I haven't thought about this in a long time. J.P. Patches. So I'm going to put this up and you'll be able to see it. From Bobby B's youth. Here you go. And anybody that's in Seattle will I think remember old J.P. Patches. So here is J.P. Patches and Gertrude. And yes, Gertrude is a man. Maybe that's why I haven't had a problem with my LGBTQ brethren, because one of my favorite things when I was a kid was, in fact, Gertrude. Julius Pierpont Patches, J.P. Patches, was a clown and the main character on The J.P. Patches Show, an Emmy Award-winning local children's television show on Seattle station KIRO-TV, produced from 1958 to 1981. J.P. Patches was played by show creator and Seattle children's entertainer Chris Weddis. Oh, he died in 2012. When the show ended in 1981, the J.P. Patches Show was one of the longest-running, locally produced children's television programs in the United States. For 13 years, it was on twice a day, mornings and afternoons, 6 days a week, including Saturdays, where it aired only in the morning, from Monday, February 10th, 1958, through Saturday, December 26th, 1970. The premise: the show was live, unrehearsed improv with rarely more than 2 live actors on screen, Weddis and Bob Newman, but with frequent contributions from the sound effects man and an off-camera crew. J.P. Patches was the mayor of the city dump, where he lived in a shack, and inside of which was the appropriately rough but colorfully furnished studio set. He welcomed frequent guests: Seattle Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops, various local and national celebrities, and his cast of supporting characters. Sturdley the Bookworm, a puppet; Esmeralda, portrayed by a Raggedy Ann doll; Ketchikan the Animal Man, a sort of Jack Hanna character; Boris S. Wart, the second meanest man in the world; Leroy Fump, a character obviously based on Art Carney's Ed Norton; Tikey Turkey, a rubber chicken; Grandpa Tick-Tock, a grandfather clock with an elderly face where the pendulum would be; the Swami of Pastrami, Super Clown, a JP-like superhero; and JP's evil counterpart, JP Scratches. There you go. And JP's girlfriend, Gertrude. So there you go. There's Gertrude and JP Patch's girlfriend. So come on, folks. I grew up in Seattle. How progressive were we? Pretty progressive. So there you go. So yeah, Calvin. I guess every city has that. So there we go. That was what I had. I had JP Patches and Gertrude. Danny Pettit. I think it's Pettit. Hi, Rob and the Post-Geek Singularity. This is my first letter, and it's a long one, of which I'm writing while watching your live stream with a few cold beers. God bless you, sir. So with that in mind, what kind of beers? I hope hearty. Like, were you drinking Dragon's Milk with 11% alcohol? So with that in mind and an 8-hour time difference, please bear with me if my spelling and grammar goes awry. Since the beer bug virus has locked the world down, I've been watching your videos, solo streams, and collaborations with others, such as Heels vs. Babyface and John Campea. You have kept me entertained and, more importantly, still sane. Helped with the beer, of course. It's your live stream news flash, Affleck Batman joins Keaton Batman, Robservations 493, which has prompted me to write this letter. That was the actual last show. Before 1978, my world of entertainment was toys of mainly die-cast vehicles. Meccano and Lego, the pre-licensed set before film merchandising was the norm in the UK. And while watching old sci-fi B-movies, classic Doctor Who, Blake 7, Space 1999, Thunderbirds, and Star Trek, which all were in black and white. At the time, my dad refused to buy a color TV set because it meant he would have to pay the more expensive annual BBC TV license. What a tool, man. What was with your dad? There were 2 types: monochrome at 10 pounds and color at 25 pounds. Oh, my God. Which both were a lot of money back in the 70s. Well, that's right. You should have taken that color money and have your dad buy you toys. For me, though, I was none the wiser. It was a simple and innocent time. Then December of 1978 arrived. My dad was made redundant after working 25 years for the same company. He used most of his redundancy money to pay off the mortgage and renovate our home, but still refused to get a color TV. However, with whatever money he had left, I was treated to a surprise that under normal circumstances I could only dream about. I was treated to a trip to the cinema to see Superman the movie. And like every 8-year-old child, after watching the late, great Christopher Lee fly on a giant screen and in color, I can't even imagine that. I was completely blown away. My world was changed forever. Prior to that, my only other superheroes were the classic Incredible Hulk TV series and the 1960s campy Batman. And while it's not my intention to berate them, they didn't compare to Reeves' Superman. Hell, they weren't even in the same stratosphere. After that, I grew up to appreciate other superheroes, especially the other parts of the Trinity, Wonder Woman and the darker Batman, meaning Tim Burton's Batman, the 90s Batman the animated series, and so on. To that note, I also grew up on other franchises, including Marvel, but not as much as DC. It's probably due to that fateful day when my superhero cinema cherry was popped back in 1978. Superman will always ultimately be my favorite superhero. Now, I've come to the point of why I'm writing this letter. After all the divisiveness over Man of Steel and Batman v Superman not being true to the classic characters, Metropolis being pummeled in Zod's final showdown, Superman and Batman killing, etc., I'm with you, Rob. All right. Now I've come to the point of why I'm writing this letter. In Man of Steel, Clark had just learned who he really was in one moment, and then had to save the world, not just Metropolis, but the world in the next, before he even had a chance to let it all sink in, let alone evolve into Superman. To top it off, Clark was forced to kill General Zod before he could kill the trapped family at the end of their fight, and everyone else for that matter. Zod was so full of psychotic rage with godlike powers that he would have absolutely not stopped until he destroyed every human on the planet. That was my takeaway. As for Clark allowing Metropolis to be partially destroyed, well, how could he stop it? If he dragged Zod away, then the general would have just come back and used the city against Clark. Psychotic, remember? Metropolis and the innocent lives lost were tragic casualties from a terrorist attack in the most horrific sense. Clark was a farm boy, totally inexperienced in such things. How can he outsmart an intelligent, militaristic, and apathetic mind like Zod's? He was just as innocent as those who suffered and died, even though his accountability was part of the story arc in Batman v Superman, or more accurately, Superman's accountability by the time the movie was released. Speaking of Batman v Superman, Batman should not kill? What the fuck? Come on. This iteration of the Caped Crusader was partly based on Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, who was older, disillusioned, and embittered for the loss of Robin, and not making a difference in the fight against crime. He killed in the graphic novel, which was declared to be one of the best storylines ever put to print. No one complained. Above all that, he was manipulated by Lex Luthor to kill Superman, so when he finally realized that he was being played, not to mention save Martha, he was most likely really pissed off. With all that pent-up emotion and a time limit to save Martha, damn, I mentioned it, I'm not surprised he went really badass on Luthor's hired goons. They wouldn't have thought twice about killing you or me. To round up, I really like both these movies and what they represent, especially in these current times. Are they perfect? No, not a chance. But I enjoyed Zack Snyder's take on these characters. However, I was exasperated and confused with Justice League because it was Frankensteined away from the outline vision of the previous two films. We're not going into the Warner Brothers shit take on all that. It's all old hat now. Release the Snyder Cut. Oh, wait, we're getting that. Hopefully for better, and can't be worse, and I can't wait. Is Man of Steel better than Superman the movie? In my opinion, maybe in parts. Don't get me wrong, the 1978 movie is iconic for what it portrayed and achieved in the 70s without CGI and the advancement of technology. Richard Donner and Christopher Lee convinced me that a man could really fly, which still holds up for me today. But it's also a product of its time, just as in the same respect that Man of Steel is the current take on Superman. Henry Cavill as Superman? Absolutely. Let him come back to play the Man of Steel again. Look, I think they're going to announce a Superman movie, which I know is happening in some form. If Reeve was still alive and didn't suffer that tragic accident back in the 90s, then possibly let him play Jor-El or Jonathan Kent. Not to belittle Russell Crowe or Kevin Costner. Another point to this letter, Rob, is that I was like you. I was hoping for a new Cavill Superman movie reveal at DC Fandome, but after the bombshell you dropped today about Ben Affleck coming back to be in his role as to reprise his role to reprise his role as Batman, and the not so coincidental removal of the surprise announcement panel, now this does not seem likely. I know. Do you think there will be a new Superman movie or Man of Steel 2? I think there will be a Superman movie, a new Superman movie, and they're just going to call it Superman. Affleck returning as Batman? Yes. Gadot continuing as Wonder Woman? Absolutely, yes, please. Cavill returning for a new Superman movie? Still hoping. It's now gone to stupid o'clock. I've missed half of your live stream trying to write this letter, so I'm going to have to rewatch it after some sleep. Live long and prosper, Rob. Be safe. Can't wait to receive my new Hot Toys 6-scale Henry Cavill Man of Steel figure with functioning heat vision. It will be going next to my Christopher Reeve Superman figure. Sweet! Danny Pettit, living in a little market town in Somerset County, 150 miles southwest of London in the UK. Well, thanks for that letter. What a great letter you have written to me, and I very much appreciate you writing in, so thanks for that. This next one comes from Electron Star Collapse. All right. Hail, Viceroy. I've been listening to quite a few episodes of Robservations at work ever since Midnight's Edge sent the shout-out when Twitter trolls tried to have you canceled. I haven't seen the offending... Actually, it wasn't Twitter trolls, it was all of my friends. I haven't seen the offending post in question, but I've heard a little bit of details, and I felt like sharing a little bit with you. I am a transgendered, closeted in physical reality, but I've been rather open online and trying to come out altogether. I'm even looking into hormone therapy in my future, which will make it impossible to stay closeted soon enough, and no longer just being transgendered, instead a transsexual. I'm also very openly in a polyamorous relationship. I don't like to qualify my gender or relationship status in conversations generally unless the question comes up, or it's important to make a specific point. In this case, my point is that I'm a prime target to feel offended or threatened by people who intend to do so. As stated, I've not read the Twitter post, but I've listened to you speak your mind. I can tell you're a person of kindness and inclusiveness. Even if you did say something potentially offensive, I cannot believe that what was said was meant to be taken as offense. I was offended. That's why I said what I said. It actually makes me feel a bit shameful when I see such attacks against undeserving people, because it's one of the reasons that I haven't come out in public as transgendered. I feel like the community that is representing me is hateful and disgusting. Don't get me wrong, I'm a hateful misanthrope myself. But I cannot abide myself with the community when it seems like their most vocal speakers are actively trying to ruin people's lives. I love your passion for genre culture. I wish you could have finished Axanar. I still love watching Prelude. Me too. I appreciate your attempts to keep your channel open for everyone, even those you disagree with. It's actually become a positive part of my workday to listen to Robservations, and I plan to continue. That, by the way, is probably the nicest thing you could say to me, and I very much appreciate you saying so. I hope I can continue living up to that. I'm sorry to bring politically cooked topics to the conversation, but I wanted it to at least be known that there are transgendered people out there that appreciate what you are doing. I'm glad you're not letting the trolls keep you down. To move on to another topic, since I've already discussed my transgendered background, I thought I would offer my feelings about seeing transgendered representation on screen. First, I feel like a non-trans actor, I refuse to use the term cisgendered as I find it derogatory, should be allowed to play the role of a trans person just like a trans actor could play a non-trans person if the actor fits the role. They are, after all, acting. As far as trans characters go, yes, I would like to see more, but not in the shoehorned way that we're seeing it develop. The Japanese figured out years ago how to write good transgendered characters that feel like people and weren't thrown in just to score some brownie points. Also, being transgendered shouldn't be like choosing a disadvantage from a pen and paper character flaw chart, which gives them an advantage over people who didn't take the flaw. One of my favorite trans characters on screen comes from the Japanese animated series... I don't know if I can get this right. Okay. Comes from the Japanese animated series Fushigi Yugi, The Mysterious Play. There is a chosen guardian soldier named Noriko that has the power of super strength, and she is early ousted as a man in women's clothing. At first, Noriko hates the lead character, but grows to become one of her most loyal companions. She comes to terms with her birth gender before the end of the story. Her story was told in a way that wasn't preachy and delved inward. Spoiler, she was also the party's first casualty, giving greater weight to the loss of a character that grew so much over the series. Also, both Japanese and English voiceovers were performed by women, which felt very suitable. What I really would not like to see would be the story of Superman suddenly realizing he's been trapped in the wrong body all of these years and he needs to accept himself as Superwoman. I am not a fan of characters with a long and rich legacy suddenly realizing they're LGBT. It degrades the character, making their whole past a lie to the reader or viewer. Growing heroes make sense to become LGBT, but established characters are already the heroes we look up to. If our heroes couldn't accept themselves before out of fear of persecution, then they were really a weak hero to begin with, and they do a disservice to the LGBT community. I also want to make it clear that I'm not demanding representation. I'd rather never see a trans character on screen than have it be given to me just for a pandering's sake. I like straight white male characters. I like straight female black characters. I like black female characters. I like straight black female characters. I'm not offended by the lack of trans characters. I just like knowing they exist in a non-offensive way. I'm sorry for falling down this somewhat political rabbit hole, but thank you for making your channel feel more welcoming than many places on the internet. I feel it's better to have a civil disagreement and a healthy public discourse and learn about each other better. I know it's a bit weird coming from a misanthrope, but I also feel like a healthy discourse seems like a rare and precious commodity. Maybe that's why you are the existential Mr. Rogers, because you try and keep things generally upbeat, even when you don't agree with the members in the community. Don't let the stars collapse on you. Oh, man, I love that. Don't let the stars collapse on you. I think that might be my favorite saying I've ever heard on this show. And, of course, this was from Electron Star Collapse. First of all, you are not the first transgendered person to write to me in this fashion. And it gives me, I feel both proud and I feel a responsibility to be able to continue to make this place inclusive. And my whole thing about people, and it basically is that everybody is welcome here. And I believe people that are trans, they were born that way. I really do believe that people who are trans, a lot of people talk about it being body dysmorphia or gender dysmorphia or whatever. No, I really believe that if somebody was born and they feel like that they were born in the wrong body, I think that's absolutely true. And I think that is a naturally occurring part of life. And just like I think that many people that are born LGBTQ people are, because they know they are, and I think it's also naturally occurring. So this idea that we would ever fight against the natural order of people in the world has always baffled me. As I've said, I had LGBTQ friends from the time I was 13, and it was very apparent to me that this was not something they chose to do. This was something that they were born this way. And to me, I'm like, why should it matter to anybody? What we want is we want to have a society, a civilization of human beings that are allowed to be who they are. That they need to feel that they are living in a world where they can thrive. Like as I said, I'm a staunch individualist. And every person, whatever shape, size, color, creed, however they identify with in terms of their gender fluidity, whatever. Every single human being, I've said it before, is a precious commodity. There's one of each one of us in the entire infinitude of the universe. All of us are delightfully wacky and interesting and unique in our own ways, and all of those things should be celebrated. Every single person should be celebrated. So, look, a person I know that I've been friends with, that we worked on the same, she's a cinematographer. She's trans. When I first met her, I did not know that because she hadn't transitioned yet, but she's been doing that. And, I have, I don't want her to ever be anything other than who she is. And I think that's I like all kinds of people. I don't understand. I guess I don't understand this desire that everybody wants people to be a certain way. And I just don't get it. That's why I say I honestly believe that every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. You know why? Because every single person is in fact unique. And that I think we need to eventually, one of the things that there are two things that I think humanity needs to accomplish, and that's I think maybe why I'm a Star Trek fan. And the first and foremost being that we need to respect human life more, all human life. And I don't understand why we don't, and I don't. My baseline is that every single person that I've met, for the most part, look, I've met people that are not nice, and I've met people that aren't necessarily. I've been in situations where I've tried to talk. I've made friends with people that it could have gone south. And the only reason that I was able to do that is I think people understand that I genuinely do like them. Like my baseline is to like people. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are, and they can tell that. And I think anybody can tell that. If you genuinely, like when you meet somebody, if you lean into it, like, I mean, literally physically lean in, hold out a hand. Hey, good to meet you. If you're in a civilization that doesn't shake hands or whatever, maybe not do that, but smile. You know, people can see that, and it's been in my nature since I was a kid. It's not necessarily something I have to work on, because, you know, in my own mind, it's like, especially when you go to a foreign, like when I go to a foreign country, when I was in South Korea in 2018, for me in my mind, I'm like, ooh, I'm on the alien planet of South Korea, because I'd never been there before. And everything, like, do they have the same lines in the middle of the street? What are street lines? Everything is different, which delights me. And I feel that way about most people. You know, and I do think that you identify, I'm more interested that you identify as a misanthrope, which I love, and I think within your own community, you're going to have more of a problem in your own community than you would have coming over here to the Post-Geek Singularity. You can come over here, but your own community, like you said, is going to say, we don't. You're going to get canceled for some of the thoughts that you brought up in your letter, which is, again, I don't understand. I mean, I wish we lived in a world where everybody could pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of their own happiness, because we're here for such a short period of time, and I think that's what we're least owed. And you know, like, I keep telling people one of my favorite YouTubers is ContraPoints. If you haven't watched her channel, you know, I mean, I think her stuff is great, and you know, she did document her transition and all of that, and I think people should watch these kinds of things and learn. But anyway, I want to thank you for writing in, Electron Star Collapse. And don't let the stars collapse on you. I love that, man, because that would be bad if they did. What if a star collapsed and it was a black hole? God knows, you'd be pulled into it and you'd meet Maximilian. You'd go to hell. It wouldn't be good. But you know, again, it really makes me happy that you feel that you can come here and feel welcome. And I know, man, to be honest, geez, all of the people here, man, it is tough. It is tough, man. It's tough not to get political in this day and age. Man, it's tough. It is tough. It gets tough. And I know sometimes we delve into these kinds of issues, but yeah. And by the way, I want to thank you for this anime suggestion. I don't know this anime, but I'll have to look at it. But yeah, it gets tough to not be political here. And I hope if you're ever not made to feel welcome, and some people have left. You know, some people have left because of the political talk and things like that. But like, I don't consider you as a trans person writing this letter into me to be anything political. I don't see that. I mean, if you're talking about trans rights, yes, this is a political issue, I'm sure. But as a human being and as an individual, you are welcome here. And I don't think you describing your experience as a trans person should be inherently considered some kind of political statement. I mean, it would be like, I don't like when I explain my experience of the world, I don't feel it's political. I think what you have conveyed in your letter is exactly what I say at the end of every episode of this show. Every person you meet, as a person, as a human, you related your story. This is exactly why this community exists. And I appreciate that you felt that you could relate your story. And I really think the way you were describing characters and representation, I very much appreciate that. And I agree. I think we are living through this area or this period of time where I get the idea to show representation, and I'm all down with that. But I think the representation that we're getting is this weird virtue signaling pandering, and it's not genuine. I think it's people trying to, oh, let me try and do my part by pandering rather than creating a character. Like, if you're gonna have a character who's, say, of any kind of minority, the experience of being that minority should be inherent in the character that you're creating, and it should inform the character. If you just create characters that aren't dealing with this issue, and you just say, well, this person's gay, or this person's bi, or this person's trans, and it isn't, you're not dealing with that part of their character in the stories that you're telling, then you're doing people a disservice. Everyone now just wants to say, like, look at this character, they're this way. But if you're not telling stories about the experience of being that kind of a character, then it falls on deaf ears, I think. But it's interesting, like when you say here, I really would not like to see, you would not like to see the story of Superman suddenly realizing he's been trapped in the wrong body all these years. And I love your reasoning, because by not coming out or not dealing with that sooner, he's not a hero. I like that. That's really what a great way of thinking about this. But thanks for this letter. Don't let the stars collapse on you. What a cool statement. I'm curious. Write in and tell me if electron star collapse is something that you've gone by for a while and why you chose that, because I think it's great. I love that. Gil Bavel, or I think it's Bavel. Gil Bavel is here. I know you've been here before. Gil's a longtime member of the Post-Geek Singularity. I probably always get I probably said your last name 10 different ways. Oh, this is a private message for me. I can't read that aloud. Sorry. It's not anything bad. It's just it's a work-related thing. Let me go back to what you guys are saying and wrap this one up. Darth Poncho, after your show today. Oh, you already said that. Royce Freeman, thoughts on The Player by Altman and The Stuntman. Oh my God. Well, okay. First of all, Robert Altman's The Player, based on Michael Tolkien's book The Player, I love. That's life. That's reality. That's Richard Grant. I love The Player. It's a great Hollywood story. It's a little scary and a little horrific, but I do love The Player. Greta Scacchi's in it. Tim Robbins, of course. It's great. And The Stuntman's one of my all-time favorite movies. The Stuntman, for those of people who don't know, 1980, Richard Rush directed it, who also directed things like Freebie and the Bean, and went on later to direct The Color of Night, who a lot of people don't like that movie. But hey, let me tell you, if you collect physical media, buy the Kino Lorber disc of Color of Night just to listen to Richard Rush's commentary on making movies. It's amazing. I love The Stuntman. The Stuntman was one of my favorite movies about making movies. And The Stuntman, one of the places, I believe it had its world premiere in Seattle. And I went and saw The Stuntman like 3 times. My grandparents took me the first time. It had such an influence, such an impact on me about how movies are made and the reality of movie making as opposed to the fantasy of movie making. Peter O'Toole, Steve Railsback, Barbara Hershey. So good. Even Mo Green. I love it. I love The Stuntman. And it was so great that, was it Severin? I think Severin put out the Blu-ray. It's not the greatest Blu-ray in the world because of the elements, but I love the movie so much. Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, if you want to make a grown man cry, make him watch the DS9 episode The Visitor. Although I encourage people to watch all of Deep Space Nine, The Visitor is an episode that can be watched on its own. Jake episodes almost always pack an emotional punch. I agree. Obviously that's a great episode. That's kind of an off-topic episode of Star Trek, but again, it deals with time travels and alternate histories and fathers and sons, and it's an amazing episode of Star Trek. Amazing. So yeah, Danny Boy sends in a super chat and says, "Hi Rob, you pronounce my surname better than most. Thanks for reading my letter, Danny Pettit." Pettit. It's a cool last name. Is that French? I hope so. Stephen Foley sends in a super chat and says, "Hey Rob, DC Fandome just announced Milestone Media Comics are back, and they're in talks to do a live-action Static Shock movie." Okay, well, for those of you who don't know, Dwayne McDuffie started the Milestone universe with other creators of color. I want to say back in the early 90s. And they did comics like Icon and Static Shock, and that makes me happy because I've been going through my comic collection, and that means I have every Milestone comic will go up in value. So I will get them bagged and boarded. And Static, which was called Static Shock in the animated series, that's really cool. I think that's fantastic. And what a great thing for Dwayne McDuffie's legacy. By the way, for those of you who don't know, Charlotte Fullerton, who's a friend of mine, I went to USC with her, Dwayne McDuffie's widow, they have the Dwayne McDuffie Foundation, and look into that. It's a great cause, and I think it's amazing that, that's really cool. Very exciting. I need to get off. I believe the panel for Zack Snyder's, well, hang on. Let me see, because let me turn DC Fandom on and see where we're at now in the live broadcast. Oh, wait a minute. Can't open the... What? What? It's not taking me back to where I was? Wait a second. How come I can't get back in? Oh, I'm back. I'm back in. I'm back into DC Fandom. It was well, okay, I don't know where exactly they are, but somebody speaking Italian. No, these must be fans. Okay. Anyway, for those of you, I hope I'm getting off before we get to the Zack Snyder panel. So Jeff Yerke is here. Hello, Jeff. Jeff says, greetings and felicitations from the smoke-filled Northern California. Keep up the great work. And Mrs. Yerke says, I always say Yerkley. It's Yerke. Jeff Yerke. What a cool last name. Like John Berkey, but with a Y. Mrs. Yerke says, hey back to Mrs. Yerke. I hope you guys are staying safe. We're continuing to corral Westerns on the big plasma, and it does make sense. That is great. Well, you know what I say about Westerns, because after all, as you know, I am the Duke of Dope Discourse. By the way, Zevius did this. So anyway, I'm going to bring an end to Robservations episode number 494. We are whining about movies. That is right. We are whining about movies. We are doing Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, and Claudius will be joining us. Our first guest on Whining About Movies. How exciting. So join us at 6 p.m. tonight. 6 p.m. So I'm going to end the show. I want to thank all of you for the generous support of the channel. I want to thank everybody who writes in letters and sends videos. And we got the 500th episode coming up, which is amazing. I cannot believe it. I want to thank my moderating staff. I don't know. Oh, the Snyder Cut panel is in 30 minutes. Okay, well, that's good. I want to thank Mr. Derringer. Haynock is here. The Richard is here. I don't know if Robert Pariso is here. I don't think he is. I also want to thank Mike Bodden and Greg Smith. And if you haven't, to know the Richard is to love the Richard. He always is running Zoom parties and watch parties over on the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page and on the Whining About Movies Facebook page, so which will be back at 6. And yeah, so all of that. I will be back tomorrow, of course, with episode number 495. You can still, of course, write in. Please go to the Burnettwork.net. And if you want to send me letters or videos, in the top right corner of the website, you will see where you can do that. So I want to thank all of you very much. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I'm going to go back to DC Fandome for the big panel of the day, which is, I think everybody, you just sign up and you can get in. You can all watch the Zack Snyder panel. You can see the trailer, and that the you know, what was that? What is it? The thumbnail. This thumbnail. You can see this thumbnail. And because I stole these are images that are in the trailer. Darkseid, and then, of course, the Justice League. So, and report back and tell me what you think. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better day. And I mean that. Sincerely.